Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Grand Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Grand Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Grand Group by emailing thegrand, G-R-A-N, group at edinarealty.com or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Grand Group with Edina Realty, 7-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners. On this episode, David and Hoges recap the Twins' 3-game series against the San Francisco Giants. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win. My name is David Kufis. With me today in studio, Andrew Hoges Hoganson. Dan is in the great wilderness. He always mocks me when I say that, but to me, Hoges, if you're in a tent, you're in the wilderness.
Well, and we can't get a hold of him at all either. Like, he sent us his Puckett's picks at like 3 a.m. this morning in order of who he thought he could pick. So, like, I mean, it's a very legit comment, I feel like.
So, some news here. We have a ton of housekeeping here, Hoges. Willi Castro, Hoges, is named to the All-Star game. Can you believe it?
I was shocked, but you look at his numbers and they're really good. Like, he legitimately deserves to be in. You wish like guys like Royce Lewis had been healthy to be able to maybe take that spot instead of Willi Castro, but deserving, and I'm happy for him. I'm sure Rocco's happy for his son or father or adopted. I don't know.
We'll never know. We'll never understand that Dan Thompson metaphor. But also, I thought this was an important time to mention that we should never forget, Hoges, when talking about all-star players. 4 all-star players, including Lamont Wade Jr., who we saw in this series, were given up at some point as a result of the Twins' desire to keep Jake Cave as a 4th outfielder.
You have to keep him. They had to. I mean, he was the heart and soul of that team for so long.
Just can't get over it. But anyway, then here we go. The All-Star break again. It just couldn't come at a better time for this team. So Miranda just went to the IL. Correa potentially to the IL. We're not sure yet. With plantar fasciitis in his other foot. What is this man eating that his feet can't understand how to work properly?
I don't understand. I wish I were a doctor and understood this more. Maybe I need to call up some of my doctor friends and see what that means. But like, is it some sort of hereditary thing? Like if you have it in one foot, you're probably going to get it in the other. And can he just... That is not what hereditary means.
I don't believe that man's ever been to medical school.
I didn't mean like it's contagious from one foot to the other foot. But no, like, can he just wear Dr. Scholl's or something like that in his cleats and he's going to be okay?
That's all it should take. And then Jeffers is still struggling with a hamstring, obviously. Buxton's getting extra rest, but we haven't really heard about any injury to Buxton.
So they said it's his sore elbow from running into the wall when he made that catch. I can't remember if it was I think it was in game 1. So, it was during game 1 because they said during game 2 that he was feeling better. I think that's why we saw him pinch run, but we'll get to that later on the usage of him.
Yeah, so anyway, season standings now. The Twins enter the All-Star break 4.5 games back from Cleveland. And Hoges, here's what I've been thinking about. Because I really was bummed that the Twins couldn't pull out another victory in this series because 3.5 sounds infinitely better than 4.5. And I'm like, it's 1 game difference. What does it matter? Well, here's the difference, Hoges. If the Twins were to see Cleveland in a 4-game series, you can make up that gap of 3.5 in one series. 4.5, even if you sweep, you're still half a game back.
I really thought the same thing when I was looking at the standings. And it's just frustrating when like the Guardians didn't do well against the Rays in this series. So the Twins had an opportunity to pick up some games. When you're chasing a team that has the highest winning percentage in the AL, you can't be hopeful that they're going to lose a lot more series like this. And I still really want the Central. It drives me crazy. And I kind of want you to play the dumb sounder, but we don't have one for both of you.
Just a bit outside. He tried the corner and missed.
David's Dumbs.
You guys keep talking about this team like they're a guaranteed playoff team. Like we're 10 games up on the last wild card. We're not. Like this is going to be a battle. And the wild card makes me nervous with how well Boston is playing. I know Kansas City has kind of fallen off ish, but I want them to pass Cleveland. So the fact that we're just being like, oh, they'll make the playoffs, it's fine, we'll figure it out there. I don't like that. Like, have you guys never watched Twins baseball before?
I think we're still on such a high from last season. There's just sort of a presumed victory. And so you're right. We should probably be a little bit more hesitant with our language about this team making the postseason. I'm still a believer, though, Hoges. I got to be honest.
I want that Kool-Aid. Can you give me some of that Kool-Aid? I need it.
Yeah. Anyway, last note here, Hoges, before we get into the series recap. Carlos Santana had a very interesting stat happen in this series. He has now homered in all 30 active MLB ballparks, which is a really weird stat, but really impressive
awesome
when you think about it.
Yeah, it's sweet.
So a Giants fan caught this home run ball, and the Twins and Santana asked for the ball. And normally when this happens, folks, it's like you get a signed bat and a ball in exchange for the ball itself, this whole thing. Well, and some people, the Mark McGwire home run ball was a big one that sold for like $3 million at auction because, they couldn't come to a deal with the Cardinals. Actually, famously, Mark McGwire just wouldn't meet with the guy, and that's all the guy wanted, which I got to be honest, Hogs, especially with hindsight, $3.5 million as opposed to meeting Mark McGwire. I can tell you which one I'm going to sign on for.
Based on stories about Mark McGwire, that kind of tracks. I feel like that he wouldn't.
Remember that famous interview when the guy's like, well, your best numbers were when you were on steroids, and he's like, well, I don't really think that adds up. And they're like, no, that's
perfectly.
There's no addition necessary here, Mark. This is just what happened.
That guy's living in denial.
So this fan, Hogs, is trying to make the most of an opportunity, and so he says to the Twins, sure, you can have this ball, but I would like Giants season tickets, which I guess for the ball itself, it's not like it's a series, winning ball. It's an oddity, and it's an impressive stat. But your thoughts on this fan's decision to really play hardball?
Shoot your shot. Like, I totally support that. And, like, he doesn't care about the ball. And it's not – the Twins can afford it, too. Well, maybe not. The Pohlads can't. But, like, I have no problem with them demanding the world. I actually met with the guy for the Twins who does all of that, who goes out and collects the balls and kind of just, like, negotiates with the fan. And we were asking him, like, what's your coolest story of a fan who, like, just wouldn't take the signed ball, signed autograph, meeting the player, whatever. And Jim Thome apparently collected every single one of his home run balls that was hit. And normally they'd bring him back, they'd meet him real quick, he'd shake his hands, and they'd give him a signed bat, one of Jim Thome's bat, and that's what he would trade for the ball, which seems like a pretty good deal. So they bring this guy back that caught one of the home runs, and Thome's like, hey, I'll give you a signed bat, and the guy's like, I think I want more than that. And they were all stunned, like, wait, everyone else has agreed to this right away. And he points back at Thome's Twins jacket, like the old, like, leather jacket kind of ones that they used to have. Yeah. And he's like, I'd like that. And Thome's like, sure, that sounds awesome. You can have my jacket. So he handed him the jacket, and then the curator or whatever, as he's walking out, Thome was like, hey, can you go tell, like, whoever the clubhouse guy was that I need a new jacket? I just gave that one away. So it was kind of a cool story, but I love that. Like, it's been the new debate now. Like, what would you want for a guy's first home run or whatever? Like, what would you ask for the Twins? But it just adds a whole nother level of complexity when it's at an imposing ballpark.
Correct. And we've had this discussion before, and where I've landed, and again, it sort of depends on the significance of the ball, but where I stand, I want a signed bat, a signed ball, and one pair of Champions Cup seats. That's all I'm asking for, which doesn't seem like a lot. I feel like that's not, like, over the top. Season tickets feels like a bit
but
much.
Why not?
unless it's a home run ball that breaks a record or something.
But then you're not going to give it up. Then you are going to sell it or something. At least I would, I guess. But yeah, I agree with you. Anything that's like on just like not going to the Hall of Fame, basically, I think the rule is, I like your rule, like a signed bat, signed glove, something like that. I'd like to meet the player. I think that would be kind of cool if you could shake their hand real quick.
Yes.
And then 2 Champions Club tickets, and I'm happy.
All right. Well, with that, host, we've shot the breeze a lot here. Let's go ahead and get into the series recap.
Series recap.
Game 1 was just ugly, Hogs. It was not a fun one to watch. 7-1, Giants absolutely dismantled this Twins team. A lack of offense. Joe Ryan on the mound, Hogs, and it was a weird outing according to Joe Ryan's standard.
Wax on, wax off.
No home runs. He goes 5 1/3 innings pitched, 6 hits, 5 earned runs, and 6 strikeouts. And it felt like so many of the balls that were getting hit around were not on like bad pitches. Like he just seemed to be getting hit. They saw him so well, and I don't know that I have a great explanation for it.
I feel like, I haven't watched much of the Giants games this year, but it felt like that's how they kind of were this entire series. They were just finding green grass. Obviously you're not going to hit a whole lot of home runs at Oracle Park anyways, but yeah, this game was weird. I give you that line, and you'd say, oh, he gave up 3 home runs every single time with 5 earned runs. No, none. It's kind of weird. Maybe that's a good sign. I don't know. This game was just icky.
It was icky from the start. That's a great word for it here. So bottom of the first, Wallner in right field. We're missing out our greatest right fielder in the history of the game, Max Kepler, sitting this one to start. But Wallner misplays a ball by Jorge Soler, and it leads to a triple and then a sac fly by Lamont Wade Jr. Now, this should have either been a single if Wallner let it drop, or I am truly convinced, as much as we mock the whole like Max Kepler great right fielder thing, I do think Kepler catches this ball.
Well, we're going to say that again later about if a certain person was playing a certain position that the ball would have got caught. So I'm going to save my anger for that one and just hold it in on this one.
Fair enough. Top of the second here, Lee's robbed of an extra base hit by left fielder Michael Conforto. It wasn't going to be a home run. It was like right at the top of the wall, but a great play by Conforto to make that catch. And then the bottom of the second is where it gets ugly to start. So Conforto walks. Mike Yastrzemski hits a double to deep left center field. Buxton then crashes into the wall. Not great. Like in a way that, again, only Byron Buxton could crash into the wall. He seemed okay. And then we have Brent Wisely singles, and then this puts the Giants up 3-0. That Buxton wall, I mean, it's the same thing. Every time Buxton makes contact with the wall or the ground, we're always nervous.
Well, and we should have been, because then he didn't play the next two games after that, other than a pinch running situation in game 3. But Yastrzemski has looked incredible in this series for the Giants. He had a lot of very, very timely hitting. It also cracks me up that you can pronounce his name better than you can pronounce Sheriff. So good for you on that one.
Oh, thank you. Top 4, Ramos has a great diving catch to rob Carlos Santana from a single. I feel like the defense that the Giants put forth in this series was a little bit ridiculous. They stole a lot of runs from the Twins. But bottom 4th, again, Brett Wisely hits a triple, and then Solera a single, which scores Wisely. Giants go up 4-0. And at this point, Hogs, I'm thinking the Twins can still come back. Like 4-0 is not a death sentence. Ryan tends to settle, right? Like he might get through 7 at this point. He doesn't. But so top of the 6th, the Twins finally get on the board with a Correa single, a Santana double, and then a Castro ground out. Scores Correa. This is what bothers me, Hogs. It just feels like every single time the Twins scored a run in this series, it was due to an out happening somewhere else.
Or 2 outs, or a double play somewhere. It was ridiculous. We didn't get a lot of timely hitting. The long ball streak went away in this game, so that was frustrating. And they had a lot of opportunities where they could have got one here that would have helped out things a lot.
So the Twins streak here, 28 games now they had with a home run. It ends. They were chasing the MLB record set by the 2019 Yankees, who had 31 in a row. So it was a little bit of a bummer. Ryan is still on the mound. He walks Matt Chapman and Michael Conforto, and then Thielbar comes in for some reason. And then a ground rule double for Brett Wisely scores Chapman, and the Giants lead 5-0. And then, Hogs, another streak comes to an end. Just a game full of streaks ending. Bottom 7, Josh Stalmont enters and gives up his first earned runs of the season. So Ramos singles, Chapman walks, Conforto doubles, and then Ramos and Chapman both score. Giants lead 7-1. And here's the thing about Stalmont. I realize that people might look at that and think, oh my goodness, he must be an absolute killer on the mound. The thing is, though, he's let like 98% of inherited runners scored. So it just happened to be that finally he let one of his own guys cross the plate.
I do like that it was his own inning, if that makes sense. Like, it's not like he had guys, he came in with a guy on second, walked a guy, and then gave up a double, so he got one earned run plus let an inherited runner score. These were all his. None of them got on. He started the inning. He finished the inning. There's kind of some finality to it. And this game was frustrating. Like, obviously, we didn't pitch well enough to win it anyways, but when you go 1 for 11 with runners in scoring position and leave 10 guys on base, that's just frustrating. You're not going to win a lot of ball games like that, but you're not going to win a lot of ball games when you give up 7 runs either. So
also true. So let's go on to game 2 here. Twins win this one 4-2. SWR on the mound. He goes 4 1/3, 7 hits, 2 earned runs, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts, but Hogs, lots of base runners. I mean, he kept the damage in check, but every moment you were watching this game, you thought, okay, the Giants are going to break this open at some point.
But he battled, and that's the one thing that I've loved about him. Like, he has had a fair amount of rough starts when watching in the last couple weeks or so. But his final line is still incredibly good for a 5-starter. I mean, I think we're putting him in position 4 now for the Twins in their rotation. I was really impressed with him in this game because, he did let up a lot of base runners, but he got out of a lot of jams and he gave the Twins what they needed. I know you want more than 4 1/3, but getting out of there with 2 earned runs was great, and it paid off later.
Yes. So bottom of the first, though, a scary moment here. Matt Chapman misses a home run by maybe the width of a baseball. It was a very close play. They had to review it, and it did in fact go foul. And then a couple of just notes here. Bottom second, a great diving play by Brooks Lee. He moves to his right, he dives, grabs the ball, and throws out the runner at first. Great play. You should check out that highlight if you haven't seen it yet. And then top 4, Twins finally get on the board here. Jeffers is hit by pitch. Wallner doubles in Jeffers, and then Santana walks, and Wallner scores on a passed ball, which, folks, if you don't know the difference, so a wild pitch is credited when the pitcher throws a ball that the catcher should not have reasonably caught, whereas a passed ball is when the catcher should have stopped a ball or caught a ball that he should have reasonably questionably caught. This was like a glitch in the Matrix, I promise you, because the catcher here for the Giants, it's like he forgot that the pitcher was throwing the ball. It was very
I don't know how
bizarre.
it didn't hit him either. Like, it doesn't make sense that it even made it past. But I was so frustrated with the Fox announcers in this one because it wasn't the regular Twins broadcasters. It wasn't on Bally Sports.
Please attempt to be a gentleman.
But they were giving Jeffers so much credit for manufacturing that run because he tagged up and made it from first to second on a long fly ball so that he was able to score, wait for it, on Wallner's basically triple because Yastrzemski had the air out in right.
Clever girl.
He would have scored anyways. He would have scored if he was like practically halfway to first base instead of even on first base for that. And they kept talking about how great base running it was. And it was like, it didn't matter. Like, yeah, sure it was that he had the awareness to tag up on that. But my goodness, I was so frustrated with that during the broadcast.
Yes, quite frustrating. A weird thing. Anyway, bottom four here. Michael Conforto walks, and then Wilmer Flores, ground rule double. Yastrzemski single, and then Conforto scores on it. So Twins are still up 2-1. Bottom of the fifth, Soler doubles, Ramos singles. This was a weird play. The single, it's deflected by SWR, but the deflection allows Soler to score. So if SWR lets that go, even as like a traditional single, the ball's moving fast enough that I think he stays at third. So it was very surprising to me that SWR's deflection is actually what allowed the run to score.
He knew right away. Like the reaction on his face was just instant that, if I wouldn't have touched that, we would have been okay there. But yeah, that's one of those weird moments as a pitcher where you can't turn off those reflexes, but it ended up biting him in the butt.
Yes. So top six, Santana hits the homer we spoke about earlier. Twins lead 3-2. Again, another one needs review because it was very
I don't
close,
think it was a homer. Do you think it was? I don't actually think it was. It did not look like it hit that foul pole. And I hate how in Oracle they have the netting go all the way down to the foul pole. So when it gets to the foul pole, you can't tell if it hits it or not because there's a fence right there, or there's a netting. So the ball still bounces back. So who knows? I'm glad we got the call, but I'm not sure. I thought Kepler's right after that was a home run, but apparently that didn't hit the foul pole right out in right field. And I got to give credit to Dan Hayes for this one. He said that both the Twins fans who were in those two sections that had the best view called it correctly. The one said fair and the other one said foul on Kepler's home run. So Hayes was like, they must have got it right because the Twins fans were right there and they wouldn't have given a fake call.
Totally. So then top nine here, Vazquez singles, Castro singles, Larnach singles, and then Jeffers grounds into a double play, which scores a run here. Twins lead then 4-2. And then Duran gets his 50th save. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then let's go on to this debacle, Hogs. Game 3, Twins lose this one 3-2 in just the dumbest possible way. So Chris Paddock, the law enforcement officer, is on the mound. He goes 5 innings pitched, 5 hits, 2 runs, 1 of them earned, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. I think that's about as good as we can expect from Chris Paddock for the rest of the season until they move him to the bullpen come the postseason.
And it was a pretty similar start to SWR's too. There was a lot of traffic on the bases, but he got out of it. He got outs when he needed, and it's just the offense couldn't come alive.
So then bottom second here, Michael Conforto's singles, Yastrzemski walks, and then Estrada hits an RBI single. Giants go up 1-0. Again, the game is still within reach. Bottom third, Lamont Wade Jr., the former Twin, hits a double. Patrick Bailey RBI scores Lamont Wade, so Giants are up 2-0, and then nothing happens, Hogs. Absolutely nothing happens for a very long time. Blake Snell, though, Hogs, goes through 7 innings pitched, only 1 hit, 8 strikeouts. He's perfect through 6. But a Manny Margot single in the top of the 7th stops the perfection.
At least it was a well-hit ball, too. But then, so I want to get into this a little bit because I want your opinion on it. The Twins ended up grounding into a double play in that inning, so he still faced the minimum through 7. If the Giants had completed a 27-out game with letting up the 1 hit and nothing else happened, no other base runners the rest of the game, where do you rank that in like the echelon of perfect game, no hitter with like a bunch of walks, no hitter with 1 walk? Like,
yeah. I mean, it's a good question, kind of, but I still think it has to go perfect game, no hitter, and then whatever this was.
I disagree.
You put this above a no hitter.
It's awesome.
With like
you could have like, if you had like 3 triple plays every inning, every guy gets walked on, and then you get a triple play every inning, that would be phenomenal.
How many walks is it for this to take over a no-hitter?
That's a good question. But I think if you face the minimum, it doesn't matter. You can you can let up as many as you want and get all these double plays.
We've gotten a bit deep here, Hogs. Let's keep moving here. Top 9, finally, Castillo, who was called up for Miranda, who went on the IL. He walks, Larnach doubles, Wallner strikes out, and then Margot doubles to score 2. Buxton had come in as a pinch runner. We're going to talk about that later. So the game is tied at 2. We go to the bottom of the 9th. The Twins lose this one, and it's just so sad. It was a very sad way to lose a baseball game. We're going to talk about that in the segments. But with that, Hogs, let's go on to Puckett's Picks winner, which honestly I sort of feel bad about.
Catch 'em all, Kirby Puckett!
Puckett's Picks winner.
This is so sad from just like a scores perspective, okay? So, Hogs, you took Wallner, who scored -2, and that put you in 4th, but not by much, Hogs. Not by as much as it should have. Dan took Miranda, who didn't play, so he got 0, and Miranda hadn't been put on the IL, and that's the only time you can make a change, is if the player moves to the IL prior to the start of the series. And then the listeners took Correa, which was probably the right choice, but Correa only played in 1 game, who scored 1 point. I took Buxton, who didn't really play in games 2 or 3, but he scored 2 points, so I come away with the victory, Hogs.
I think we maybe need to think about not letting Dan pick for a while, because I think this is 3 picks in a row who have ended up getting hurt or not playing in a game because of an injury or something like that. So this is not a great trend that we're on.
No. So I don't get the bonus, though. Obviously, Santana is the one who comes away with the high score on the team. But so I am still in the lead with 15.5. Hogs, you're in second at 11.5. The listeners are at 6, and then Dan is still in last place at 5. And some sort of curse, I guess.
It's been rough lately. It's not great.
All right, well, let's keep pushing here. Beast versus Bench.
Beast versus Bench.
Is losing fun? Is losing fun?
Well, as I mentioned here, Santana just looked like a different player this particular series. He had one bad play where he misplayed a ball, but it didn't really matter too much in the long run here. But so Santana goes 3 for 8 with a home run. Again, that weird stat in all 30 active MLB ballparks. Just a cool stat. I think that, again, the way that we were so quick to want to move on from him at the beginning of the season, obviously he's proven us all wrong, Hogs.
Yeah, he really has. I mean, it's a Max Kepler situation again where we've had to eat our words, but he's been incredibly valuable to this team, and he's been really clutch lately too. A lot of hits in big situations, so it's nice to see him coming around. Especially, I mean, who knows what this team is going to look like after the All-Star break. We need a guy like him to keep producing.
Certainly. Who do you have as your beast, Hogs?
This one was tough because outside of Santana, no one did particularly well at the plate. I mean, you can see with our 4 picks for Puckett's Picks, it just wasn't pretty at all. So I went with SWR, and I know that goes against everything that I believe in, but this series was just kind of gross, and I'm giving him, again, I'm cheating because I'm giving him a more holistic view. His last bunch of starts where he's kind of been scuffling a little bit, he's still gotten close to 5 innings, pitched into the 5th, and only given up 2 to 3 runs. That's what you need out of a guy like that, and the Twins haven't historically had that, and it's nice to see them have that. I want that top line starter at the deadline right now, but he's making me feel a lot better for the depth at the end of this rotation.
I don't think there's any depth in this rotation, but maybe we'll get to that a bit later.
Fair.
I'm going to put Matt Wallner on my bench here. 2 for 11 Hogs with 7 strikeouts. I am so concerned because obviously the Twins now have a trend of having at least one guy on the roster who strikes out a ton but hits a ton of homers. So it was Miguel Sano, and then it was Joey Gallo, and now it's Matt Wallner. And he's got to stop smelling his helmet.
Yeah, what is that?
I
saw that today again. I thought, please tell me he's got smelling salts in there, which would be weird to do that. But yeah, why? I don't know.
It's a weird thing that he's doing here, Hogs. But I just hope he showed that he can have some discipline at AAA and not strike out all the time. But obviously, it's a step up to the majors. You're going to have to learn how to lay off sliders.
Yeah, and you want to give him credit. When he first got called up, he did really well. But did he really face a major league team when he first got called up? Because I want to give him more credit for that, but maybe we shouldn't.
Potentially not. So who do you have on your bench, Hogs?
I put Manny Margot, and I would prefer to describe this later in my Minnesota moment because it was a kind of a compilation of a lot of things. After he did one good thing, many bad things happened after that I think were directly responsible for the Twins losing today's game and this series. So if that is not deserving of a bench, I don't know what is.
If I could do a quick Dan Thompson impression. Well,
in Game 3, they wouldn't have even been in the position for him to make that mistake if he didn't put him in that position by scoring the runs. So, you know what? It all evens out.
I got to defend Dan. Okay, I agree with you. But I got to defend Dan a lot. When you were asking the question about should the Twins have gotten a frontline starter, you added knowing what you know now about this team. So Dan's answer was, no, I wish they hadn't because, and again, we're kind of eating our words after Blake Snell pitched so well today, but Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, those guys have not done great. So I get what his answer was saying like, no, but I think I agree with your question, but you phrased the question horribly. You should have just said like, knowing how well the Twins are, ignoring how well those guys have done, do you wish you had done something? Because it's hard to ignore.
Okay, I guess I assumed that was the question. I didn't realize I needed to be as precise to explain that you can't take into account the guys the Twins would have
He is
signed.
an English teacher.
Because clearly
you know.
the question doesn't, but the question doesn't make any sense if you don't assume that.
It's true.
Because that'd be like, hey, don't you think we should have not signed those starters knowing that they were terrible?
That's why I agree with you. That's why I started it off with I agree with you. But you gave Dan a beautiful out, and he took it. And you knew he was going to.
No, see, that's ridiculous. Okay, I don't even want to talk about this. You should have known. What I just explained is why that question made more sense. You should have been able to extrapolate what I was trying to say.
I would have done it too. If I were the co-host that day, I would have done it too.
It just bothers me to no end. Anyway, enough of this here. Let's go on to Rocco's Rewind.
Rocco's Rewind.
Okay, so Game 1, Vazquez DHing, batting 9th, after you finally make a move, putting Kyle Farmer on the IL, bringing up Camargo. Why on earth aren't you sitting Vazquez, having Jeffers catch, and giving anyone else the DH slot? How many other teams, Hogs, have their DH batting 9th?
I think Vazquez is actually doing really well in the last month.
Shut your mouth. Honestly, I am so over it. If I have to deal with one more text from either of you talking about, Vazquez is playing pretty well as of late, knock it off.
Is that the voice you hear when you read our text?
Whenever Dan talks, that's what I hear.
Well, I'm going to be nice to Rocco real quick because playing Lee, and it's Vazquez related, playing Lee at second and having Vazquez play third ended up paying off so beautifully in Game 2 because of all the web gems Lee just amazingly threw it. It didn't work so well today, but whatever. So I want to give him a little bit of credit for that because that was beautiful. My second question is more of like a front office deal. Were they being way too cute with this roster, knowing that they had a week off and they didn't want to put anyone on IL because if they can play on Saturday, they want them available because of all these problems. Vazquez is playing third. He's DHing and batting 9th. And the rest of the lineup, you look at it and you're like, who are all these guys? And then Jeffers is getting hit in the hand and he can't do anything. I kind of wish they would have just put some guys on IL and tried to figure it out Saturday, Sunday, Monday next week when they have 3 more days that they have to be on there. It's just there's so many guys that were completely unavailable.
I don't know. I'm just really upset at a lot of Rocco's choices here. And I understand that some of these choices maybe he was forced into. But Game 3, top 9, I know he wasn't forced into these, Dan. You pinch run Buxton for Larnach as opposed to pinch hitting Buxton for Margot. And then further, now, I understand. Okay, yes, we can look back with hindsight and we can do the whole Back to the Future thing and understand that Margot did pretty well because he hit a double that tied the game. Regardless, why is Buxton not staying in at center field as opposed to Margot, who, again, has spent less time in center field at target field than I have, Hogs?
I think that elbow thing was still bugging him from Game 1 when he crashed into the wall, and you don't run with your elbows. So I think that's what it was. But yeah, there comes a certain point.
Hogs, I told you explicitly to be less reasonable, okay? These are the episodes. Dan's nowhere in sight. It's time to let it go. I don't want to hear counterpoints, Hogs. I want to hear you be as upset as I am.
They would have won this game had he have kept Buxton in center field. They would have. I mean, that is an undeniable point, so I'll give you that for sure. And we talk about it so much. Margot clearly wasn't brought here to play center field for Byron Buxton, and then he does, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but you make that stupid play out there in center field to allow that little league home run, and it's so frustrating because Buxton catches that.
Yes. Well, let's let you talk about that here. Let's push forward to Minnesota Moment.
Minnesota Moment.
It's the 9th inning of today's game summed up exactly how I feel about this whole series. Margot gets that great base hit in order to tie the game at 2-2. But the second he stands on second base is why he became my benched player of the week. He could have made it to third, but he did a face plant on his way from second into third, stumble up and barely made it back to second. The very next batter grounds out to second base. I understand that infield is in and you can't do the whole, well, if this happened, would this have happened? But there is a chance that he scores that run there in the bottom of the ninth, especially if they pinch run Buxton for him right there. So again, it could have been 3-2 going into the ninth. Then we get to the ninth inning. You have to either catch that ball, which you shouldn't even be diving for it, or let that ball drop in front of you and hold them to a single. Then you have a guy on first. And then I don't know how you miss it by so bad. And then Brooks Lee, we can get to that later with him just hucking the ball over the third baseman when the guy was standing on third. Yohan Duran not backing up the play. And they just deserve to lose after that. But it all started with Margot tripping on his way to third and then somehow deciding that he needed to be a hero in center field in a tie ball game with no outs. I don't understand it.
I can't compete with you physically, and you're no match for my brains.
It was quite bizarre. So we're backtracking. We normally go chronologically, but Hoges was just on such a roll, I had to let him keep talking here. But game 2, bottom 9, Duran gets his 50th save for the Twins. This is courtesy of Aaron Gleeman, but this is kind of a weird stat here. He gets his 50th save, which ties him on the all-time Twins saves list at number 11 with Taylor Rogers. And Rogers actually gets the loss in this game for the Giants. But what I find fascinating about this, first of all, does it not seem like Rogers should have had more saves? And does it not seem like that seems like a ton for Duran to already have?
I think it does, but we forget about all the blown saves when Rogers came in back-to-back days.
One step forward, two steps back. Yes, anyway, just kind of a cool stat. Let's keep pushing here, Hoges. We got lots of questions here in Mauer's Musing.
I just don't know how it can get any better.
Mauer's Musings.
I'm going to continue my rant that has basically been going on for the last 3 segments because I can't get over it.
There he is, beating that dead horse.
What does this lineup look like on Saturday when we get back from the All-Star break? Because if a lot of those guys still aren't playing, this was incredibly stupid to not be sending them down to the IL right away. And I'm nervous about some of these guys. Like, I know we talked about Correa earlier. I'm a little nervous about Buxton if he wasn't playing the field there in a tie ball game. You want that guy out in center field. And the Twins just have earned every single level of distrust when it comes to disclosing injuries to us. Miranda, all of these guys, if they're back on Saturday, this team is dangerous. If Royce Lewis comes back soon, this team is dangerous. But what does it look like on Saturday? Who is going to be back?
I have no idea, Hoges. Honestly, they might as well call up the entirety of the Saints roster and just try and piece it together from there. We're going to start with Randy Dobnak on the mound.
Eddie Julian leading off.
Yes, it'll be great. Well, at this point, I think the Julian Wallner question is going to be very important down the stretch here in the season. But that is not my question, Hoges. My question is, Hoges, there was a Twins insider tweet where they basically made a mock-up of what Carlos Correa's season for the Giants would have looked like if he had actually signed with them, as opposed to with the Twins. And even if he had the same numbers, it would look great, right? But my question to you is, the Twins are currently at 54-42. What would the Twins' record be if Carlos Correa was currently a Giant?
Please hold. I would like to annoy the crap out of you real quick.
If you just look up the WAR,
I am looking up the WAR, and I am going to see.
What's the point in asking the question, Hoges? What's the point in asking the question?
Well, you see here, Carlos Correa has a 3.5 WAR, so they would be 4 games.
I hope Dan hates that voice that we do of him so much.
I mean, it's a lot. It is a ton, and I think it's more than what just those numbers, which who knows how they get, honestly. But I think it's more than that because he does bring that championship culture. He brings that attitude.
I want to build a championship culture.
His play in the field, I think, is always underrated on the advanced metrics, and I love having that guy on our team. That's why this heel thing just drives me crazy, but yeah, I think it's a lot worse. I think they're probably behind the Royals in the standings.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a crazy perspective, especially if the Twins didn't sign anyone else and Kyle Farmer was your everyday shortstop. That would be just a mess. Actually, there's a real good chance that Brooks Lee was starting every day at shortstop at this point in the season if Carlos Correa wasn't.
That's the thing, and numbers can't say that. Like, the effect that Correa has had on Miranda, I think, is huge, because Miranda was one of the guys that he was super excited about being in the Twins organization when he came here. His effect on Royce Lewis, I think, has been huge. His effect on everyone else in the lineup. His effect on Brooks Lee not having to play right away, especially when he had back spasms, being able to slowly get him into AAA, and then he raked in AAA before they needed to bring him up. All of those things are because Carlos Correa is a Minnesota Twin, and I couldn't be happier. And all the Twins fans who just last year were just raking on him for how poorly he was playing, I kind of hope they're eating their words a little bit with how good this guy has been this season, because that was a good signing, and that guy is incredible asset to this team.
He is. So I had another question here about the Twins being healthy enough, but we've talked about the health pretty significantly. So one last question here, Hoges, just as we're getting ready to head into the All-Star break, the trade deadline is fast approaching. Do the Twins make any moves at the deadline?
They're not going to. I mean, they might get like a soft hitting outfielder or whatever, and they might pick up if they don't think Brock Stewart is going to come back, they might get a reliever. I will be stunned if they get a top line starter, and I don't want a number 3 starter. I want a top line starter, but what you have to pay for that is going to be astronomical, and the Twins don't do that.
They don't.
I would love to be wrong. Don't get me wrong. I would love to be wrong. I would give up prospects too, because I think that this team, and I wouldn't give up Wally Jenkins, but outside of him, I think I'd give up just about anyone. This team's future is so bright, and they have young guys now. So depleting that farm system, granted you want that for trade deadlines down the road, but let's go. Let's go this year and next year. I love it. The window is wide open.
Let's do it. I agree, Hogs. Let's keep moving here. Series grades time.
Series grades.
Well, normally I go first in order to give Dan his space, but so I'm going to switch it up here, Hogs. I'm going to let you give your grade first.
The segment is just going to be so short, I feel like, now, because we don't have Dan going. It's a C.
So me think, why waste time? Say lot word when few word do trick.
I'm going to just leave it at that. It was icky. It was a C.
I'm going to give them a D. I actually think I would have given them a B- had it not been for everything they did wrong at the end of Game 3. 1 out of 3, yeah, it's not great. You'd prefer 2 out of 3. Obviously, you'd prefer a sweep, but 2 out of 3 would have been more reasonable. But just the way that they lost Game 3, it was heartbreaking and dumb, and I was so frustrated. And I don't like it when this team's performance affects my mood in the way that it does. I think if it's a walk-off homer on Duran, sure. But my goodness, a botched play by Manny Margot followed by a throwing error by Brooks Lee to score a Little League home run to end the game. My mood can't recover from that.
I think that's why we're so spicy right now. We're recording this about an hour and a half after the game ended, and we both are struggling massively from recency bias right now. That play is just playing over and over and over again in my head. So I'm not going to argue with you. A D seems reasonable.
Certainly does. With that, Hogs, let's go on to Herbie's headlines.
I don't know, Jack. It looked like Herbeck pulled him off the bag.
Herbie's headlines.
So a quick note here, Hogs. Whit Merrifield was released from the Phillies, which, that's a name that Twins fans are well aware and familiar with.
Yeah, good riddance.
Well, okay. I thought you might have more than just good riddance, but sure. I guess we'll just go with that. But anyway, so he's been in the league since 2016, obviously with the Royals for a majority of that, and then a brief stint with the Blue Jays, and then on to the Phillies, but no longer. Another note here, Hogs. The Angels, I guess, I don't know if this is league-wide. I just saw a tweet. I didn't know this before, but they make their rookies go get Starbucks in full uniform at the Starbucks outside of Wrigley Field, which is just such a cool tradition.
Yeah, I've seen it happen with a few other teams, too. I don't know if they all end up doing that with their rookies, but I love that stuff. Where hazing obviously is wrong. I'm not a fan of that at all. But this stuff is fun. It's cool to have the rookies do that, have people see them out there and everything. It's a cool tradition that baseball has.
Well, and then lastly, Hogs, we can't have a Herbie's headline segment without talking about Shohei Ohtani. He hits his 200th home run of his career, and I think he made, $4,500 on the bet he put on himself for that game.
Not the bet number, but doesn't the home run number feel like it should be higher too? Because it feels like how much we talk about him, he's hitting 80 every single year. So shouldn't he have hit that a year and a half ago?
You would think so. Real quick check-in here, Hogs. How tinfoil is my perspective that Ohtani placed bets?
It's so tinfoil. It is incredibly...
No,
yes, it is. It is. No. There was a federal investigation where they had recordings of Ippei, or however you pronounce his name, actually impersonating Shohei in order to do it. And there's no way it went that deep. I don't know.
Yeah, impersonating Shohei, I'm sure. Yes. Oh, man. How crazy.
I believe in the sanctity of the game.
You have him on record? Oh, no, that was definitely his interpreter. He was totally pretending to be Ohtani. It's totally what happened. Sure. Yeah, and I'm the one with the tinfoil hat here. My goodness, Hogs.
He didn't bet on baseball. He didn't do it. He's the greatest player of our generation maybe ever, and he did not bet on baseball. Hey, one good thing about this Herbie's headlines, we didn't mention anyone getting hurt. It feels like the last few have just been some star player is out or getting Tommy John or something like that. It's kind of refreshing to have all three be good things, including the Whit Merrifield being released.
Fair enough. With that, let's go on to the Puckett's picks for the Brewers series, which is a week away now, Hogs.
And we'll see you tomorrow night.
Puckett's picks.
It is crazy that they're finally letting this Brewers series be on a weekend. They just never do that. So, it might be nice to try to get down to Target Field to see one of those games.
The listeners, Hogs, get first pick as always. They're going to take Santana because I think he's about the only guy you can be assured is going to be on the field come Saturday. And then it'll go to you for your pick, Hogs.
I don't know. Who's going to be playing? This is so frustrating. Like, Castro? I'm going to go Castro.
Okay, so Hogs is going to take Castro.
Can we re-record this segment on Saturday morning, please?
There will be, again, if guys are moved to the IL, only if they're moved to the IL, we get to change your picks. That's the only
In light of recent news of rules, I'm going to take Carlos Correa then.
Okay, that's reasonable. That's reasonable, I suppose. So then Dan has given us his picks, and so it'll be Brooks Lee is who Dan's taking, and then I will get next pick, and I don't know. Who's left here? I think that Buxton returns. I'm going to take Buxton.
You and I are both repicking.
I'm not convinced that elbow is real. He's going to be fine. I don't understand. If he can run, he can play center field. It'll be okay.
You don't need your elbow to run.
No, you can just toss the ball. It'll be fine. He can underhand it. I don't really care. He'll be just fine.
If he had been out there, we win today.
Absolutely. Okay, well, Hogs, thank you so much for filling in. This has been fun. You're going to get a lot of Hogs over the next couple of weeks here. Both Dan and I are on vacation, sort of flip-flopping every other week, so it's a lot of Hogs. You're going to be the most consistent Men for the Win contributor over the next 4 or 5 episodes.
I'm sure the listeners are super excited about that, so we can get some more reasonable takes on here.
I don't want to talk about reasonableness anymore. But so I'm going to send you out here because I'm going to, folks, and I'm done. Here we go. Well, folks, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend. You can follow us on X at Men for the Win and find our Men for the Win Facebook and Instagram pages. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform so that you're notified when new episodes are available. And if you could leave us a rating or a like, we'd greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to support the show further, you can find us on Patreon. Link in the description. Thanks for listening, and as always, go Twins.
That'll wrap up another episode of Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.